Welcome back. I'm Tedward, and thanks to Acton Auto Boutique in Acton, Massachusetts, we're driving this beautiful 1996 Audi A6. It's a 2.8 liter V6. This one is an all-wheel drive. You could get these in some different engine options, especially depending on what market you were in, and often they came in front-wheel drive. This is an automatic ZF transmission for luxury as opposed to the manual, which was available. And I am shocked at how good a shape this thing is in. And I'm really impressed with how it drives. I can't wait to take you out on the road in this car. But first, let's go through the basics. This is the first A6, the C4 generation. And prior to this, we had the Audi 5000 or the Audi 100, depending on which market you are in. Let's take a look inside at some creature comforts. These doors are very small, but you'll notice they open almost 90 degrees. It's pretty impressive. So you could, despite not having large doors, fit a lot of stuff in here. The rear seats, reasonable room. This is the days of mid-size sports sedans. And, you know, today, this is about the size of my Honda Civic. But back in the day, this would have been the luxury, like lawyer's family sedan. We don't have any cup holders because this was a time before needing to drink in cars, but we do have this lovely leather armrest with what appears to be a ski pass in the middle. Each passenger gets a grab handle and a light, which I think is pretty trick. Even the driver gets the little light up front, which is great. And then right here, our cigarette lighter for your classy kids in the rear. And this folds down, but ratchets up, which is nice. And then you just use this button to flip down. But cooler than that ratcheting mechanism is the strut that allows this to stay upright. This is like a hood strut for your armrest, which I think is pretty awesome. And don't forget, 1996 was an important year, the first year of OBD2. And Audi seemed to be very prepared for this because they put their OBD2 scan port right in the center of the car, not even tucked up under the dashboard. They were ready for you to need to scan this thing. Now, the first thing you notice when you get in this cabin is how long this dashboard is. The gauge cluster extends all the way to the passenger compartment. And then down here, we've got our heated seats, the scrolling heated seats, power adjustable mirrors, right and left, which do still work. However, one thing that doesn't work in this car is the sunroof. This is a power moonroof, actually, because you can flip this back. But just like I had in my 1994 Golf, you can always manually retract the sunroof by popping this panel off and using the old Allen wrench to spin it around. The glove box has a pretty cool mechanism. It doesn't just pop out, it actually kind of slides forward, and this is where we get our trunk release. But unsurprisingly, it's what's under the hood with this T-grip that impresses me the most. And it's not because this is a particularly incredible engine by an engineering standpoint, but I just think this is a beautiful engine bay. Check this out. This V6 is practically encased in plastic. It is like its own little power unit in a box. It looks like it came out of a Matchbox car. I can't believe this is real. And it's, for an Audi, set back pretty dang far. So let's give them a little respect where it's due for this one. I also appreciate this outrageous hood strut. It's just a single hood strut and it's a big one. But even the mechanism for popping the hood is pretty beefy and cool. So I gotta say, this is not what I was expecting because I'm not an old school Audi guy. Trunk space is ample and normal, nothing to see here. Let's get a plate on it and take it out for a drive. It's a windy day out there. All right, so nothing too fancy to start our Audi. We've got this typical Audi Volkswagen style key before the days of flip-up keys, and then foot on the brake into our ignition here on the dash. Big OK on the dashboard. That's always nice to see. And it jumps right to life. What a happy car. The beautiful gauge cluster with these analog gauges makes me really miss the days of yore. This is good stuff. Although these chunky buttons, this starts to feel a little cheap. But honestly, the way it's laid out is really lovely. And it's interesting that rather than try to cluster all those gauges in the center, they just extended it and gave us a clock, oil temp, and our voltage, which is great. I've got nice power adjustable seats with 4 memory options on that. That's a pretty heavy thing. But to put it in gear, there is a little secret. There's a lockout, so you don't simply just pull it out of park. You actually have to push the shifter down to get it into gear. Pretty trick stuff. The first thing I notice driving away in this vehicle is the driver's seat. First, the driving position is great, but honestly, this is a very comfortable seat. It doesn't necessarily wrap around you, but there's something very simple about it and welcoming. It is really nice. I want to go on some long trips. Brakes feel pretty positive, nothing I'm scared of. Sometimes you get into old cars, 96, it's old now, I guess, and they can feel a little sketchy, especially if they haven't been maintained. But this car with 100,000 miles, it appears to have been taken very well care of, because underneath, sure, it's a little brown when I checked out the exhaust and everything, but I didn't find any rust in the door seams or anything like that. And these typically, to me, old Audis and Mercedes and stuff, these are the ones that I'm like, oh boy, what are we in for? They're just gonna wither away. And I don't see very many of these. The one thing that I am noticing, it may need a thermostat. It's running a little cool, but we do have oil temp coming to life after a bit of driving, so I'm not too concerned. I don't think we're gonna do any damage to it. It's just so smooth. This Lexus is really taking its time merging. There is a little bit of road noise, but keep in mind, it's an incredibly windy day right now, so we're getting a lot of additional noise just from that. But what I'm struck by, again, is just all this visibility. I've got glass all around me. It's wonderful to have this kind of awareness while you're driving on a busy highway. I'm honestly not sure what I expected from this vehicle, but what I'm getting from it is build quality, because there's no squeaks or rattles. I don't hear anything crazy, especially after all these years. That says a lot for all the probably rubber and plastic and things that have just expanded, contracted, degraded over the years. That's impressive. And the drivability, it's really focused on making driving easy. So everything's very luxurious, especially the steering. This is a pretty overboosted power steering system. There's very little energy that needs to go into moving this wheel lock to lock. And I certainly feel everything in the road, so it's not trying to numb me from the driving experience. It definitely still has kind of a sporty vibe. This is definitely for a car enthusiast, someone who enjoys driving, but it's a bit roly-poly. It's going to absorb the bumps and the lumps in the road and make sure that you and your driver and your passengers aren't inconvenienced by any imperfections in the road. The engine sort of just disappears behind the car. There's not a whole lot of noise, and the noise that does come out of it is lovely. It's just that it's not the focal point. I think today, now everything is a sports car, even when it's not. There's got to be a sport mode, but this was when cars were just made to drive the way they were tuned to drive. I always associated this car with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, because prior to the C4, it was very similar underneath, but Ferris Bueller's dad drove an Audi 5000, that red Audi 5000, and that's what I think about when I see this car. But then again, there was a guy in high school in my class who had a green Audi A6 just like this, and even then I thought it was old, and that was in the early 2000s, so it wasn't much more than 10 years old, and I was looking at that thing thinking, wow, that's a cool old Audi. But I think it looks better even today. I have to say, I'm struck by the turning radius of this. All-wheel drive, and it can still do that. Look at this. That's pretty wild. My Honda Civic really could not have handled this. This is definitely a three-point turn situation in my current Civic. So, good on Audi for making a car that can handle the tight stuff as well as give you all that grip. Now, at the time, Audi is really starting to push forward the fact that, hey, look at this. Our midsize sports sedan has all-wheel drive. That's a big deal because the world is, even in 1996, starting to move toward SUVs. Not great SUVs. Maybe you think they're great, but certainly not great handling SUVs. A body-on-frame Suburban for the kids is like, you know, a pickup truck. But this was giving people the ability to have really comfortable, luxurious things that could also tackle some pretty aggressive environments, especially in winter. And that's where I think the C4A6's place in the world lies. It lies in someone who has a little bit of money, someone who's not really ready to jump into a truck, who doesn't want a Suburban, who doesn't want a Chevy Blazer or something like that, who doesn't want to go truck style for their all-wheel drive. And here we are in a luxurious, comfortable thing that can spin all four tires under power. That's pretty exciting stuff. And in 1996, I bet that was a pretty hot ticket. That's probably something that you brag to your friends about. Like, hey, watch this. You know, I don't have to clear my driveway or melt that ice. I can just drive up the hill at the ski house. Ooh. And you'd probably look pretty slick doing it. So, thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thank you to Acton Auto Boutique for the opportunity to drive a car that I haven't thought about in a long time. But the second I saw it, it brought back a lot of good memories. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one. This would just make such a beautiful daily driver for anybody even today. I mean, I don't know about crash standards 96 to 2022, but I could tell you one thing. I am comfortable and happy in this vehicle, and I've got beautifully cold air conditioning blowing in my face with no problems.